You are listening to the Brilliant Events and Venues podcast, where you learn about everything from unique ideas for attendee engagement to cool venues for hosting your events. Thank you for tuning in to episode 11 of the Brilliant Events and Venues podcast. My name is Shantae and I'm the project manager for Scavenger. And today we have a special guest on the show, and her name is Natalie Lowe. Natalie owns and operates a destination management company in the Niagara region of Canada. She is celebrating 14 years in business this fall. Originally from Northern Alberta in Canada, Natalie has been in the hotel and events industry for over 30 years. She recently added a new job title to her resume, and it is Climate Crisis Event Coach. Listen in as Natalie shares information on how to be sustainable at events on the Brilliant Events and Venues podcast. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in to the Brilliant Events and Venues podcast. As I mentioned in the intro, I have a special guest, and her name is Natalie Lowe. Now, Natalie is going to share with us her superpowers. So, Natalie, welcome to the show. Now, tell the guests your superpower, Natalie.
Well, you know what? I was torn, but I think ultimately, I thought my superpower was that I read a lot about everything. I'm one of those people who, can get lost in a library and come out hours later with 40 books. But I actually think my superpower is I am really, really stubborn. When I dig my heels in, there's just no going back. And I decided that was my superpower based on how I parent. We were recently at the Canadian Meetings and Events Expo in Toronto, and I had lassoed my teenager to come and help me. And, there's a lot of people in the industry, and they said, "Oh, that's so nice. Did you come to ask your mom or to help your mom because you knew that she needed you?" And his response was very honest. He said, "No, I just knew she wouldn't give up until I finally came. So I may as well just do what she wants." And
I like that answer.
I realized that it was absolutely true. I was going to pester him until he finally got into the car with me and came and did it. The key to handling that superpower is, to steal an old country and western line, you got to know when to fold them.
Right.
But that's really my strength, is my persistence, which as evidenced by my teenager.
Yeah, I think that's a more pleasant word, persistence. And being stubborn, Natalie, is not a bad thing. It's how we get things done. Somebody has to get it done, right?
Exactly. It's that, and like all qualities that we have, it can be viewed as a positive or negative, right? Is that, if you won't back down when you're clearly wrong, that's a stubbornness that doesn't get you anywhere. And I like to think that I've been wrong so much in my life that I'm really good at saying, guess what? I was just wrong, or I had it messed up. And I'm a golfer, and I often say that I'm really good in sand traps because I end up there so often. And by same thing, I'm really good at apologizing because I can be wrong so many times, and it costs nothing, but when it comes to things that really matter, I think we shouldn't back down.
That's right. I like that. So that's definitely a good trait to have, is being persistent and being stubborn. I like it. I like it a lot, Natalie. I like to say mine is making events fun, because I work with planners, and that's what I do, so I take your ideas, and sometimes some planners have some really out there ideas, but it's all related to our platform. So it actually, I take what they, it's kind of weird, like a magician. Like, I take the ideas, work with our platform, and then we make that fun for their event. And then everyone wins. The attendees win, the exhibitors win, of course, the as well. So
Absolutely.
definitely, yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, a little bit of fun makes the work go easier,
Yes.
because we're trying to accomplish objectives, and I picked that up from you right away. Your ability to laugh really quickly and easily. It makes a huge difference because we live in a world that's pretty fraught, and if we can't have fun, it's just going to seem like it's going to make the whole event so much tougher.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think that's why gamification is definitely why it's hot now. We've been doing this for 10 years, but it's hot now and it's definitely something that's needed in the events industry, and that's why we're doing it. But gamification it's across the board. I mean, everything
Mhm.
from grocery shopping is gamified to banking is gamified. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. It's
Oh,
everywhere.
yeah. Like you're always, and it's so funny. I have a dear friend of mine, Betty Ann Shearer, and we laugh because every time we go to a conference, especially for event planners, everything is gamified, and Betty Ann cannot resist a game. Right? She has to chase the points, and I'm like, I'll chase the points at the grocery store, but here, and it's usually a networking thing or something, and obviously none of us are shy in our industry, but I think that really helps those people who do have a hard time. They sort of need a reason to approach that person that they don't know. So, yeah, I think that gamification is it's just part of what we need to do going forward for all our events.
Share a little bit of information about what makes your events brilliant, and let us know more about the climate crisis event coach and how you tie that on together. How do you tie that in together to the events?
Well, obviously, I wear two hats at once, right? I'm a destination management company here in Niagara, as well as more recently a climate crisis, what I've called myself a climate crisis event coach. I think what makes my events brilliant is my ability to find a best fit for the client and the event experience. Um, but being a climate crisis event coach means first and foremost, I have to set a good example on the sustainability of my events. And so, are we doing the best we can with what we have? I try to make a resource light but experience intensive event. We sometimes live in a world where we think if one is good, six are better, but they aren't. We can overwhelm our attendees with light and sound and food. In Niagara, we are a bit more laid back. We are known for Niagara Falls, but we are, the largest wine region in Canada. And I opt to choose quality and proper fit over quantity. And even to be honest, rarity or popularity. This means as a DMC, I'm always looking for this sweet spot for the client that will optimize the experience without waste. Specifically, as a climate crisis event coach, I'm looking to see if I have found that optimum experience in a way that is gentle on land, people, and resources. And in truth, that means sometimes I'm coaching my client, sometimes I'm coaching my team, and sometimes I'm coaching the venues.
I'm actually really curious now as it relates to the climate crisis event coach part of you. And when you're choosing a venue, like, is there something that you look for when you're doing your events and taking all that into consideration? Can you share some of that information with us?
Absolutely. I First and foremost, I look for a great quality product and presentation. And as a destination management company, I want a can do attitude on customization and flexibility. My clients don't come to me so that I can offer whatever is already on the menu. But I also look for great sustainability practices and a dedication to the environment, which tells me that our values are aligned. I hope it doesn't surprise you that my two favorite venues in Niagara, and they're both wineries. Ravine Vineyard is absolutely one of my favorites. Very farm family ethos. Everything is made on site. Everything sort of works in a nice circle. The scraps are fed to to the pigs, and everything's done right there. And the second one
Cool.
is yeah, it's a very, very cool and family owned, and has been in the family since before Canada was a country. So a lot of
Interesting
history.
history there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's really, really a neat place, and just a wonderful. The Harbour family are just great people. They've contributed a lot to the local area. The other one is actually from a design and event aesthetic, completely opposite. So Ravine Vineyard is very rustic and homey. Stratus Winery is very cutting edge and modern and avant-garde. The French winemaker really brings that ethos to his winery, and the couple that owns the winery have done everything from geothermal to, I mean, they were the first ones. Their delivery vehicles are all electric. So,
Awesome.
really a dedication to the environment. And, Stratus started, asking us to do things like turn off our vehicles and have a no idling policy 15 years ago. They were so ahead of the curve. Both make fabulous wine, have incredible experiences, but again, have that extra step where they're really dedicated to the land. And wineries are farms at their core, and so they need to have that respect for the land where they get their product from.
Natalie, that's interesting. I like that because, like, even with your clients, you can give them an option. If they want a more rustic feel, they can go with the Ravine Vineyard. If they like that, modern aspect, then they can go with this. What's it called? Stratus?
Stratus, yeah, like the
Stratus,
cloud, Stratus.
yeah.
So
Okay.
it's stratuswines.com, and they're absolutely phenomenal to work with.
Natalie, you shared some awesome information about the venues that you just shared. And what I'm curious to know about now is the problem, and a solution and results. Like, what is it that sparked you to get into sustainability and start creating awareness in what you're doing with the climate crisis event coach title that you now hold?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and thank you for asking. I'm originally from a part of Canada which is very far north, so Northern Alberta. And about 8 years ago, my hometown burnt to the ground. 730 families lost their homes. There was $835 million worth of damage. Um, and the weird thing was, it was a forest fire in May. We shouldn't get forest fires in May because the
Right.
ground should be wet from all the winter snow, but we didn't get it. And the other thing that was very odd is that it was 30 degrees in Northern Alberta in May, and it shouldn't ever be 30 degrees in Northern Alberta, but it certainly was. And so that hot, dry forest caught fire, and despite being on the edge of the largest lake in the province,
Mm.
they couldn't stop the fire. And so, of course, my family and my friends were all affected. And it's not that they lost their home. It's that they lost their home, their neighbors lost their homes, their entire neighborhood was gone. And so people have to make arrangements. How quickly can you rebuild a town? And so people move away, and it's never really the same. And it really hit home to me what this might look like for us, how deeply uprooted we could be by some of these climate events. And, so I started becoming very, very eco-sensitive personally. But then I was on a plane last year flying from Toronto to Calgary, and I happened to notice that I had used a plastic glass for water. And I went to go work, so I put it in the pocket in front of me, and of course it cracked. And then they came and gave me another glass. And I sat there and I looked at this and thought, okay, there's about 150 people on this plane, and we've each had two glasses. That's 300 plastic glasses that are going to get thrown out at the other end. And
Right.
how many flights? And you just started to think about the size of the problem. And when I got off the plane, I was actually going to an event in Edmonton called Go West for planners. And I started talking to other planners about it, and they cared, but they were just so overwhelmed with their day-to-day and so time stressed. When we looked at the options out there to determine how we become more sustainable, they were really big solutions. And by that, I mean, they required a week, in a different destination, or a commitment to huge amount of studying. And I just know from myself that it wasn't going to get done that way, not with the tools that we had out there. And don't get
Right.
me wrong, great solutions, fantastic solutions. But it was sort of like I wanted a hamburger and somebody put a cow in my front yard, right? I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is too much for me. And so I was already pretty tapped into environmental causes, and I sat down for the next 3 months, and all I did was read and watch and absorb everything I could get my hands on regarding the climate crisis and the events industry. Then I sat down and wrote what I would call a quick start, or a boot camp for sustainability for event planners. So basically, if you have no time and your attention is spread thin, what can I give you to move the needle now? So everything you need to know in an hour to start making your events more sustainable. I reached out to everybody I could to ask them to review the course, to look at it, and then I started speaking and presenting on sustainability. And, you know, there are times when, it's sort of like into the void and what's coming back. But now I get texts from people. Last week, an event planner that I've known for years sent me a text, and she's, I walked into the lobby of this hotel and you wouldn't believe the black plastic. And I just laughed because they'd been to that hotel and they told me 100 times, never even noticed. So actually, starting this week, there are students at my alma mater, Ryerson University, in the meetings and conventions class, and they'll be taking my online course on sustainable events as part of their module for meetings and conventions. And
That is
I,
awesome, Natalie. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, I'm so happy. And it's great because in a few years, these young people will be out doing what we're doing. My challenge to myself is to get it into the hands of people who are practicing now. How can we, because the problem is urgent. And I have friends who are working on, human trafficking and, all of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them. They are all worthy. The problem is we don't do any events on a dead planet. We will plan no
Right.
events on a dead planet.
Right.
And so I've made myself a commitment. It's what is the date today? It is September 19th. Actually, it's my mom's birthday. So
Oh,
a very auspicious day. But
yes.
I have made a commitment that I will get 1,000 people to take the course before the end of the year. And I don't know how I'm going to make that happen, but I'm going to use all that persistence and we're going to make it happen. And it's so funny. People say things to me like, thank you for doing this. And I think that is very sweet. But let me be clear here. I didn't call myself your climate crisis mom. I'm your
Right.
coach, which
Hmm.
means you all are going to have to do the work, because this is a problem that I can't solve for you. If I become zero waste and nobody else does, we aren't going to move the needle. This is where everyone needs to do their part. And tomorrow will be a big day for all of us as the UN starts on their climate summit. And Greta Thunberg has talked about what can you do? And she says, if you can only do one thing, educate yourself. And
Hmm.
so in addition to the course, we're actually going to be hosting a live event. It's called the Sustainable Events Forum, and on November 5th. So if you're around Toronto, certainly we'd love to see you there. But really an opportunity for us to come together as an industry in small pockets and start to take those first little baby steps. Because, if my own experience is anything to look at, I started off small. And then the next thing you know, you give up your car and you go no plastic. And I don't know how it happens, but it happened.
Like a domino, you do one thing, you do
Yeah,
something else, or something else.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and but what I'm really trying to say to people is it's okay if you're not where I am, because I used to be where you were. Right. I,
Right.
you know, my Costco habit is sort of my last thing to kick. It's like I come home from Costco and I'm like, oh, the plastic. But I love me some Costco. And so it's a matter of, okay, how do I help the things that I love, like events and event planners, move in a direction that's more sustainable for all of us?
Right. And Natalie, you know what's interesting? I did a podcast a few months back. I think it was episode 3. I did a podcast on sustainable events. And it was right after Earth Day. You know, I will admit I was inspired because I started to do some research and then I just found some things and things you don't think about, like, and I think I did mention this in the podcast, but I was, when you think about sustainability, the first thing that came to my mind was recycling. You know, especially like at
Mm-hmm.
conference centers and expos, you see the, you know, plastic and glass recycle bin, the paper recycle bin. But honestly, before I did my research, that's what I thought it was about. I thought it was just about recycling. But no, there's so much more to being sustainable than recycling products. And like you were saying, it's about using less. Like, let's really look at what we're using. Like the example you gave with the plastic cups on the plane. You were just
Mm-hmm.
talking about one flight.
Yeah.
And just think
Yeah.
about all the flights
Yeah.
that take place, not just from your city, but think about the whole country. You think about America,
Yeah.
overseas, just all these
Exactly.
different places.
A million flights a day is the closest to a good number that I came. So that means what, 300 million plastic cups a day, right? And some planes are
Yes.
bigger and some are smaller. So if you use that as an
Right.
average, it's it's a lot. And you know, it's interesting. One of the things that I go through, because as planners, we're very linear people, and sustainability is sort of a nebulous concept. And so what I tried to do was give some frameworks on, and so I took the 3 R's, and you will note that recycling is actually the last one, and they're meant to be used in order, right?
Mhm.
But we didn't, and I added a couple of R's to them, and the first one was refuse. What can you just say? We're not going to use that. We don't need it, and that's where, you know, I talk a little bit about where, you know, we're always worried about scarcity. We better order that extra food. We don't want anyone to go hungry. Well,
Mhm.
when was the last time any of us came home from a conference and we were really actually hungry?
Right.
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 And you know, we have some really smart, very creative people in our industry. I have faith, and I know that they have good hearts. You know, the Toronto chapter of SITE, Society of Incentive Travel Executives, when Slave Lake burnt to the ground, they fundraised to replace, and donated to the fire station to replace the hoses for all of the fire trucks, because the fire trucks were burnt where they stood. And I
Mhm.
know that those people, you know, in our industry will do what we need to do. We just need to educate them, exactly like what happened to you.
Mhm.
Once that door was opened, you can't, you know, they say, what is it, a mind once opened by a new idea, it can't go backwards. And we just need to
Right.
educate ourselves and help each other.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, it's just so important. And something when we had our initial conversation the other day, you said something about us being citizens of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And we all live here. We all have our part to do, even as an individual basis, in the homes, in our businesses, and when we're talking about events, because it has such a big impact on the planet and with the plastic and the paper that's being used and just materials. Some things are just not recyclable.
Absolutely.
Um, right. And but there's
Absolutely.
things, Yeah, and there's some things that are recyclable. You're looking at composting with the
Yeah.
food that's left over,
Yeah.
compostable products, so there's so much more that I didn't learn about until I did that research. And I was just really excited when you reached out because I'm like, yes, somebody who knows about this, who's in it. Like you are in it,
Well, and
so
it's interesting you bring up composting. If you look, so all of this is generated from the IPCC report, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And they started around 1987 ringing the bell. And, here it is 25 years later or 27 years later, and we're starting to listen. And one of the things that they've identified is how we draw carbon out of the atmosphere. And I've written, some blog postings about sort of the analogy between calories and carbon. Right now as a planet, we're consuming too much carbon and not doing enough exercise, so to speak, or drawdown of carbon. And if you look at, there's an organization called drawdown.org. And they
okay.
have taken the IPCC report, and in my course, I use them as the framework for finding right action. And when I talk about right action, I'm talking about, when you're sitting in your office at your desk and you really need to get that list to the airline or to the hotel, but instead you clean off the top of your desk. Well, cleaning
Hmm.
off the top of your desk is not right action. And
Right.
so when we get rid of the plastic straws, it is a good thing to do, just like cleaning your desk is, but it doesn't hit the crux of the problem. And so if you look at drawdown.org, I use their analysis of the most effective actions in order to help each planner choose for their own event what things they can do. So, of the top 20 items in the IPCC or in drawdown.org, 8 of them are food related. They relate to how you procure your food, which foods you eat, and how you get rid of them. And it's interesting. I mean, the poor cows are getting a lot of blame for carbon emissions, but the truth
Hmm.
is 75 to 80% of our grain crops are used to feed cows or to feed
Wow.
livestock. So you see where our food system is a little bit broken, and that's one of the more immediate effects. But I think also we have to take some personal responsibility here. We had a guest speaker at a conference, and he stood up and said, "This is my 77th flight of the year." It was July.
Wow.
77th. So if you look at the carbon emissions, I mean, there's a reason why Greta got on a sailboat. She was making a point. And a lot of
Mhm.
people in climate action just don't fly anymore. Now, so much of our industry is based around flying to events. The reality is maybe what we need to do is come up with a way of carbon budgeting, just like we have a financial budget. And we say,
Right.
okay, if we all want to go to this beautiful destination, how do we offset our carbon usage? Instead, right now, we treat it like it's an ever renewable resource. And that's what's
Hmm.
getting us into trouble a little bit. I laugh sometimes and I just think our grandmothers and our great grandmothers are just looking at us, shaking their heads, going, "Didn't we tell you? Waste not, want not. Didn't we
Oh
tell you?
yeah.
Use what you have."
That's
It's
right.
and so I don't think that I'm going to have every solution, but I think if I can get enough of our colleagues exposed to some of these problems, they will come up with solutions. And that's what I think we all need to do. But everyone needs to do it. And it's, my mom used to joke about a reformed smoker. She said the people who cannot stand to see somebody else smoke is someone who quit smoking, because they get all righteous about it. and
Hmm.
and so I try really hard never to judge what somebody else is doing, and I say that over and over again because we can't shame people about their practices. It goes back to another one of my grandmother's saying, if they knew better they would do better. So let's help
Right.
them know better.
Right, which is where this awareness is playing a big part of that.
Absolutely.
And by you doing what you're doing, and you know, I'm going to share this podcast because I just think I really like after that Earth Day podcast I did, I was like, it really opened up some things. And we had a client that we had did something for an event with them, and they were so big on being sustainable. At the time, I didn't know. Of course, we did what they asked, but after that, and I started doing my own research, and I was just like, wow, this is really a problem here. Like
Yeah.
everyone should know about what's going on and the effect that it's having and how we can make changes. So this is great. This is awesome. Now I do want to roll actually before we get to that, I don't think you got through all of your R's. I think we went off on a
Oh,
tangent.
I didn't give you. The traditional three R's are reduce, reuse, recycle, and I've added two R's to the beginning of that, which is refuse and replace. So it's refuse, replace, reduce, reuse, recycle, and those are, my version of the R's. And in the course we use that as a framework, and I created a checklist where you can basically go through. So the last module in the course, I take you through a standard 2-day event, and we look at where we can replace things, where we can refuse them, where we can make changes. And once you've gone through it a few times, it becomes like anything else. It's just a habit that you form. But I like the use of checklists and frameworks, and
Mhm.
that particular checklist is available on the course. And I'm going to offer all of your listeners. They can use the code SCANVENGERHUNT, and they will get 25% off the cost of the course. So I will send that to you, and we can give them the link and the code, and hopefully we can spread the word.
Yes, I'm excited about that. Thank you so much for that.
No, no problem, no problem. My pleasure. We're all in this together, right?
That's right. That's right. Natalie, you shared awesome information once again about the what got you started, your driving force behind creating this awareness about being sustainable. Now, the question I have for you is give us three things. Just share three things with us that we can do now or that planners can do now to work towards being more sustainable at their events.
Absolutely. I'm going to lean on Greta Thunberg for the first one. And this, very passionate, smart, articulate teenager says the best thing you can do for the environment is educate yourself on the facts. And I agree with her wholeheartedly. There are plenty of great resources out there. Drawdown. Great. I also recommend to people that they follow climate activists or organizations on social media. My personal favorite is actually a handbag company out of London called Charlie Feist. Um, Funny, warm, witty, great graphics, and their information is spot on and educational. Patagonia, an amazing American company that does fabulous work and has been doing fabulous work for years and years and years. And if you are so inclined, grist.org has a weekly newsletter, and you can follow them on social media. And of course, I'd be delighted and honored if you took my course. Everything is based on the science, and it's simple and practical and straightforward. I think the second thing I want you to do, and I'm going to give you two quick and easy things to do.
Okay.
One is listen to your mom. Eat your veggies and have a little less meat and dairy. It's livestock, which is causing a little bit of an issue. And I think if we move towards more plant-based, it alleviates a bit of the stress. It will not solve the problem, but it helps. The other thing that I'm going to ask you to be conscious of is to buy recycled products. It's great that we're recycling, but the reason why the recycling system is broken is because we don't buy it. So everybody puts their used stuff in the bin, but goes out and buys new stuff. And did you know that according to National Geographic in 2010, which is 9 years ago, 27,000 trees a day are chopped down to make bathroom tissue. So please, 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 please buy recycled toilet paper. Ask your venues in your RFP, do you use recycled paper products? I use recycled paper products in the office, and I ask all of our venues. There is no discernible quality difference, but I mean, do those 27,000 trees a day really need to come down so that we can have bathroom tissue? So in the course, I do have a section on questions you can ask in your RFP, and those are some of the little items that I think that you can ask. So I think, educate yourself, follow people on social media, look at your food and, a little less meat and dairy, and then the paper products. And paper products are an easy one. I think, too, that there is a huge movement towards eliminating plastic products. And I'm going to tell you from a health perspective, and I cover this in the course, right now we know that we all have microplastics in our bodies. So when we use plastics and they break down, they get into our water system and into our food. And so I think we need to stop as much as we can using plastic. Recycle whatever you can, but there's no reason in this day and age that we shouldn't all be packing a water bottle and a coffee to go mug.
Oh, definitely.
And it makes me happy. I go to my local coffee shop and they give me a deal when I use my own mug. So there you go.
Yes. Wow, Natalie, I'm blown away. I have learned so much by just talking with you and recording this podcast with you. It has been awesome. I'm just really excited. Okay. And I know that people are going to want to know how they can contact you. So share with us all of your contact info. Everything.
Absolutely.
Everything.
I have not been highly receptive to smoke signals, but other than that, I am on every platform. So our website is sustainableplanner.ca, and my email is Natalie, Natalie, at sustainableplanner.ca. The phone number in the office is 905-984-5725. I'm on LinkedIn as Natalie Lowe, and I'm at Niagara Nat on Instagram and Twitter. We also have Sustainable Planner on Instagram. And now that the sustainability items are taking off so much, I'm mostly active on Instagram under Sustainable Planner. But all of my articles and a lot of things that we've discussed are, my articles are listed on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Natalie. You have been a pleasure, very informative, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and all that you have shared. And I just, again, want to thank you for being a guest on the Brilliant Events and Venues podcast.
It has absolutely been my pleasure. Thank you for your interest. And I know that sometimes when we look at the challenges in front of us, it seems daunting, but I know that we will get through this using the creativity and the community that the events industry is known for. So thank you, Shante.
Increase attendee engagement at your events with Scavenger's game-based mechanics. Learn more at scavengerhunt.biz or give us a call at 800-975-5161.